There are a number of ways of interacting with your user using VBA, the most simplest of which is the MSGBOX function. Now, we've been using the MSGBOX throughout the title so far without any real in-depth explanation of its possibilities and its properties. So let's have a moment just to explore the MSGBOX. In its simplest format, the MSGBOX can be used to create an OK button with a message. So if we take the MSGBOX file as we have here, which is actually an empty Excel file if you wanted to create your own, there's nothing in here yet, and we'll insert a new module, and let's create a sub-procedure that will just generate an OK message box. I'm going to call it sub MSG OK. Now the MSGBOX function is simply MSGBOX. If you're using it simply as a statement, as an OK button, you can see here the syntax. It wants a set of open brackets and then a prompt. If we're just using it as an OK, then without the brackets, we can just put our speech marks. So we're just telling people where they're at, really. Then the type of button, well, it's going to be an OK only. And we'll add a nice little title because I think that makes it look just a little more user-friendly rather than just an Excel. So title will be, and that's simply an MSGBOX. We can run that from the immediate window. And we see there's the title. So instead of it saying Microsoft Excel, it says whatever you've put as the title property. Your job has finished is the prompt, and it's simply a VB OK only, so we get an OK button. Nothing to respond to, nothing to create, it's simply a message that goes out. Now the message box can be enhanced by actually interacting with the user by asking them for a response. So if we create a sub MSG response, now this time I want them to click a variety of buttons, which could be yes, no, cancel, or yes, no, or abort, retry, etc. A few choices there are there. Now because I'm asking for a response, I need to capture that response and store it in a variable that I can then make use of. So let's declare a little variable to hold their response, so dim x as integer, and then we capture the x value by saying x equals MSGBOX. Now effectively it's acting as a function rather than a statement, it needs those brackets. And my question is, are you sure? Comma. Buttons I require are VB OK cancel. And I'm actually going to add in another property into this little parameter area, so I can put a plus and choose VB question, which will generate me the question mark on the message box, comma, title, just a moment, close brackets because I need to close the message box function. So that will take their response. Let's run and you'll see what we get. We get an are you sure? There's the title, just a moment, 2 dots. Are you sure was the prompting text. The VB question generates this little question mark here, and I have an OK and a cancel as the choice. Now, depending on which one I click, I will get a response back. So what I then need to be able to do is handle that response. So I can handle that response with an if or a case statement. Let's use a select case statement, select case X, and I'm going to put my end select there so that I don't forget more than anything. And then case VB yes. So if they say yes, then let's put into A1, you said yes. If they say no, then we'll put into A1, you said no. Now the advantage of using the select case as opposed to using if statements is if we were to use one of the buttons that gives you 3 choices, such as the abort, retry and ignore, then it's easier to put case VB abort, case VB retry, case VB ignore than it is to put 3 if statements. So let's try that out. MSG response. Are you sure? Okay. Let's have a look. Now it appears nothing has been placed into A1. The reason for that is we've used OK cancel for our 2 buttons, but we're only checking for yes, no. So we should be using VB OK or VB cancel. Now, instead of checking for the constants, you could check for the numeric values if you knew what the numeric values were. Let's just check that this now works. You said yes. Let's say no this time. Cancel. You said no. So it's checking for the right responses here. The numeric values for these, instead of using the constants, is VBOK is actually 1 and VB cancel is 2. And we can try those out and see that they still work. You said yes. So you can either go with the constant names, which potentially are easy to remember because you remember what you put here, VBOK cancel, then you choose VBOK and VB cancel. If you put VB yes no, then you can put VB yes and VB no, or 6 and 7. So you see that they still work. I said no. So here we're using the MSGBOX function to get a response from the user. The choices in here for the types of dialog boxes that you can get, so the types of buttons that you can get, are VB OK only. Let's remove those so that they come out in the list. So we've got VB OK only, VB OK cancel, VB abort retry, and ignore. So there you get 3 buttons, VB abort, retry, and ignore. VB yes, no, and cancel. So that again has 3 buttons and a straight VB yes, no. So those will generate you your buttons across the bottom of your dialog box. Now if we choose VB yes, no, cancel as an example, I need to make sure I'm responding to all of those. If they say yes, they say yes. If they say no, they say no. If I add the third case option, and for cancel, we can say VB cancel or use the numeric value, which is 2. And we'll put in the range, you said cancel. Now what I want to show here really is that all 3 of them come up, but we can actually control the default. You see the default is always the first option. So it's yes, no, or cancel. If we want to change that default, then into this same parameter really here where we're just deciding which buttons to have, where we've seen we can put a different message. We had VB question there before. Let's say VB critical this time. We can also add VB default button. And you see it says 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the default button is always the first one, but perhaps I would like the last button. In this case, there's 3, so it'll be default button 3. And what you'll find when you run this time is the default is now on here as the 3rd button. And we've changed the symbol. So you can really experiment quite well with these options here, controlling what buttons you're giving to the user, what image you're giving to the user in the dialog box, so critical, important, question, and then which of the buttons takes the default. So if they were to just press return, that is the action that would be carried out. You then effectively interrogate the value that gets returned, which is a numeric value. So you can use the numeric values or you can use the constant names. So I've mixed here, which is not good practice, but just to demonstrate you can mix both. And because we have multiple buttons to play with, the select case is probably the best way of dealing with the potential responses. Now all we've done here is output the response the person has given us, but you could actually execute a different set of commands depending on what their response is to the question you've asked them. So that's using the MSGBOX to interact with the user and effectively control the course of events.